We're 10 seconds in. We should have sound now. Today we are streaming from my living room with a view of the kitchen actually behind me, but um, because I'm working on getting one of my kids to take his shower because he needs to go to bed. He's an hour and a half late for bedtime already. But because he's got obsessive compulsive disorder, there's certain rituals that have to be done. However, he won't do them unless somebody is out here watching him to make sure he does. So we're streaming out here so that we can actually do this on Saturday, like we're supposed to, and we'll be streaming from the living room. The angles are going to be really weird. I still haven't found a camera that works, but we're going to go ahead and okay. So we're back to the watercolor paints, which, if y'all remember, I really love working with. So we're just gonna. There's two notebooks, and I might switch between which one I'm actually painting in at any given time, because I have finished another notebook now, and I would love to start work from it. Okay, whatever. Our first painting is going to be a mushroom that I drew sitting on a log, and so we're going to do the log first, and we're going to do this brown, and then we might add some colors of interest to the log after a bit. But for right now, we're just going to, like I said, start with the brown and see where it goes from there. So that wasn't nearly enough water, apparently. Easy enough fix. With watercolor, you always have to kind of make certain that there we go. Make certain you've got enough water on the brush to actually soak the pigment, and then you can move on. See, it's drying out super fast. Maybe it's just a really dry day. I'm not certain. It feels like it's been raining off and on for ages, but how it feels to me does not necessarily change how it feels to the paint. So you can see, as always, it's picking up a bit of the calligraphy ink, which means um, we're getting bits of the green spreading through. So I might not need to add a green or anything like that. Also, you might notice I'm going a little bit over the edge of the page, um, but that's okay because the page is actually set so that you can tear out pages as you're done. And I've started realizing some of these are cute enough, I actually want to remove them from my sketchbook and frame them and hang them up somewhere. Uh, where is going to be a good question because I've been filling my wall space in my bedroom pretty quickly, and I've still got more stuff that needs to be hung. So, but I'll figure it out. I always do. The joy of being me, saying I'll figure it out, somehow keeps coming true. So, I kind of like the fact that the drier watercolor paint is resulting in a little bit of speckling almost. I think that's a good thing uh, for the bark-like look, so I'm not gonna discourage that too much. Now, at this edge of the page, I am actually going to be a bit more careful because I don't want to paint later pages in here if I can avoid it. So, I'm sure I could avoid it by just, changing how I've got my paper laying, but quite a bit of effort. once we've got this painted, um, the brown of the log, I should say, we'll be swapping over to black, but I am going to go back over some of this, in particular the spots where I added the, it was meant to be bark texturing, but didn't quite achieve that. But you can see how even just using this one color, I'm able, by changing how much ink I'm picking up, how much pigment there is, I'm able to change the coloration from lighter to darker. And that's giving me what I'm looking for by being able to add some texture to it. Um, because unless it's like uh, a paper birch or something like that, it's probably going to have textured bark. Most trees don't have smooth bark unless they're very specific trees. So now we're going to turn this and give just little sweeps with the edge of our brush. We don't want to get too much, but we want to give this sense of natural, somewhat chaotic, just making it look a little more real. Okay, now we're going to swap colors. I'm expecting when I put this black on the green that the green is going to kind of flow and mix. So we're probably going to end up with a black, yep, blackish green. Okay. It's okay, nobody can see you. The camera's pointed right at my notepad, so you're fine. So, just gonna get a bit more of this black. That'd be good. Wood borals. Okay, now we want our mushroom. And most mushrooms, even the ones that have a colored cap, tend to have a off-white or gray or pale in some way stalk. So we're going to get some of this beige. And we're just going to paint the stalk with it. See, it's going to, at the edges, pick up some of that green because the calligraphy ink and the watercolor mix and mingle quite a bit. So we've got the lower half of the stalk colored. To do the upper half, and we're going to purposely grab some of that green from the fringe at the top of the stalk, just to add a little bit more color. Okay, now we've got the pale stalk. Now we want to actually do the gills. And what I'm going to do for the gills is I'm going to get a slightly darker shade than what I used for the stalk, but not a lot. It's still going to be a cream peach, But because the gills are just lots of little lines of the green calligraphy ink, we're just going to kind of brush them very delicately with that little bit of beige because we are trying to mostly just blur that green. And I think that did a pretty good job of it. So, okay, we're going to clean our brush. Now for the cap. I'm going to actually start the cap with that same beige that we used for the gills. You notice it's darker than what I used for the stem. And once I've done that, I'm going to add blotches of another color. Um, and mushrooms come in so many different colors and shapes and sizes that you could probably use any color and there will be some mushroom out there that matches it. So I'm not too worried about figuring out which color I want to do. I'd considered the red for, there's a poisonous toadstool that has the red and white speckled cap. Um, but I could really, there are mushrooms that are a shockingly vibrant color of purple, um, and will kill you, just so you know. But we're gonna just make it up as we go. In fact, thinking about it, I do think I want to use purple. It won't quite be the poisonous mushroom that I'm talking about because that one specifically turns purple once it's been cut and the edge is exposed to air. But we're just going to grab, I think we're going to use this lavender purple. So not a bright, vibrant purple, but one that's going to blend very well. So we're just going to start at this edge, and we're going to kind of not use a lot, but kind of a wash almost of it. Just very faint, nothing too overpowering. Make this edge a darker, much less intense as it washes across the mushroom. Instead of picking up more pigment now, we're instead taking the pigment that was already there, that purple we'd already put down, and just kind of brushing it across there. Now, just push this up. That is a pretty good looking mushroom, but there's nothing behind it. There's no forest, so let's take care of that. We're going to start with adding some greenery. We'll go with this green first. This somewhat darker green. It's not the blue green that I love using so much, but it's more foresty. And then we'll add some of the lighter greenish yellow texturing. Um, I haven't really decided yet if the mushroom on a fallen log is growing in a field or if it's growing in a forest. I think it's going to be a forest just because that means not having to play with perspective as much. So I'm going to just kind of do blobs and blocks of our darker green, and then we'll do some of the lighter green as well. Not looking for uniformity because I assure you, having grown up mostly in the woods, um, trees are very not uniform in how they look. They are multiple colors and multiple bits of light filtering through the leaves, and you end up with a lot of different textures and things. It's not all just a uniform, this is a block of tree. No, this is tree with light colored leaves, tree with dark colored leaves, trees that have partially lost leaves, and so you end up with patches of sun showing through them. All right, we're going to grab some of these lighter green. It's more of a spring green or yellow green, so we're going to go with that to kind of supplement some. Put down here by the mushroom. You can see just like earlier, whenever the mushroom or whenever the brush doesn't have quite enough paint on it, you get some blotchy textures, but I am okay with that because those blocky textures are actually going to help make things look more natural. So, because again, nature is not uniform or tidy or neat. Nature is very messy and very mixed. All right, we're going to add some of that blue green that I like just for a little bit of diversity in here. Now, the blue green is mostly going to be down towards the bottom of our drawing because that's going to represent like plants that are shaded a lot of which tend to have darker colors because um, that I believe that the darker colors help them absorb light better. So they're darker so that they can grab more of the sunlight that is filtering through but not super well. All right, we're going to try this color as well, which is the darkest of the greens that does not have a blue undercast to it. Because lots of these have a blue tone if you don't keep an eye out. Which, of course, they do. Green is blue and yellow mixed, but you don't want your picture to be overwhelmed with the blue when it's meant to be a forest. So, you guys hopefully can see how, with adding these blotches of color, it's looking more natural and realistic, but at least that's what I hope it's looking like for you guys. It could just be, wow, he's making a real mess of that page. But I very much follow the Bob Ross philosophy, which is you don't make mistakes, you make happy accidents. So I'm gonna grab a bunch of this, and gonna streak it in a few places. Sort of connect some of these. And I don't mind too much if I don't have like a uniform color for anything. Like, I don't mind if these blend and blur together. Of little, I'm streaming, I'm just doing it out here. Blots and blobs of colors with the green. Okay, now back to some of those other greens that are less represented in here. I should have actually grabbed a different brush than the one I did, um, because what I'm going to do at the very end of getting this all color blocked out is I'm going to come back with just water and basically mingle all of the colors together using that. So we'll just have to see how it does using this. It's probably going to take me ages, but oh well. Pretty sure people don't watch this for the speed, they watch it for the. Actually, I have no idea why anyone watches this. People do, though, so okay. That would be a Figaro complaining because the door to my bedroom is closed since I'm not in there. She likes to hide in there from the kitten because the kitten likes to make her attempts to sleep not very successful because he wants to play. So she likes to hide in my room because I keep the door shut so he can't get in there when I'm doing certain things like, working or sleeping. Because he also makes my attempts to sleep very unsuccessful. Um, and he's often very noisy during work and also very bitey when I'm trying to focus on hardly anything I'm doing. So he gets banished from the room temporarily for a while. Mostly when I'm working, though, because very hard to do my job if I'm being bitten. Uh, many, many greens in this, but they're pretty. I think it looks pretty. And I like how the different greens kind of mingle and melt together, which is why I'm going to go over this with just water here in a bit. But before I do that, I'm going to just block in all of the colors, get it so that every spot has green, and then as that dries a bit, I will add some streaks of brown to symbolize the trees. See again those blotchy bits where there wasn't quite enough pigment on the, or quite enough water on the brush, but it had picked up a lot of pigment. So it's gonna streak up and down with water, and you can see how that's causing these colors to blend. I don't want to do it too thick because, or too much water, because I don't want the paper to warp more than it already does, because of course it does, because it's not actually watercolor paper. This is mixed media paper, but it works very well, so I'm happy with it. I do think I grabbed the wrong other notebook, because I believe that the one that I meant to grab alongside this one is a watercolor specific notebook, but I'll worry about that in a bit. Right now, we're just mixing things, melding. You can see how it picks up the water, drags some of that already painted, and makes it streakier. It blends it a bit more. Just a couple, I'll add the streaks for the wood. See how some of this is almost making it look like dappled sunlight through tree branches. That's what we're going for. Is that mingled, dappled forest look. Now, let's go back to our brown and use a darker brown. Oh, the other sketchbooks. That's not the one I meant to use. Oh well. Let's see. Got a darker brown here. We'll use it. Kind of a gray brown, but oh well. And we used a lot of the water, so we're not going to have a super strong brown tree trunk. It's going to be more like hints of the forest among the dappled green. So, ghosts of trees in the background. looking though. Just gonna add a few more streaks of the brown in the background. Again, ghosts of trees, not trees themselves. Their lines just a bit. And I think we have it. Gotta admit, it looks much better on camera than it does in real life. Alright, we've got to wait for that to dry because we used a lot of the paint. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the stream on, be right back, and I'm going to go get my watercolor book that was what I'd meant to be using, not the other mixed media. So, I will be back in a moment, and I'll see you shortly. Got my watercolor book. Now, I have not done watercolor on this particular ink that I use for this drawing, so I don't know quite how it's going to behave. I have a sneaking suspicion that what I'm going to end up with is lots of running from this particular ink. But we'll find out in a few. We are going to start with trying to paint the walls, well, the cave background, which is what all this black is. Oh yeah, this runs like crazy. I'm definitely going to have to dip my pen and rinse it really well. Figaro, no. Because I don't want to put that black in my ink. Because if y'all have noticed, I've done a pretty good job of keeping my watercolor inks individual colors. Now, the reason why I'm actually not just going straight water on it in doing this uh, blue paint is because I want to give the illusion of it actually being a dark cave. And most things that are dark, that are black, especially if it's like in nighttime type black, it's actually going to have a blue or a purple haze to it. And yes, I did just pick up my rinse cup because I want to try and get as much of the ink as possible off of this. But yeah, most things that are black, even the sky at night, have a blue or purple hint to them. And so that's why I'm doing the blue wash with this cave. And you might notice that that blue, it's very faint because the black is so powerful, but it is definitely there. Just giving it a little haziness. Figaro, no. Sorry. I don't want her thinking that yelling at the door will get her what she wants, because then she does it while I'm trying to work. And the first part of my night, I'm taking calls normally. And so I don't need her yelling while I'm trying to take my calls. So, and I am very much cleaning this brush after every single set of strokes. Now, a friend of mine, who is also an artist, has since taught me about cross hatching so that I don't have to just scribble on the page to get the look I'm going for. So, um, so I don't expect to have quite this much ink spill in the future, because I'll be using cross hatching when I'm trying to do dark spaces like this. And that means less ink on the page while still giving that illusion of blackness. Um, I need to be very careful around my little cave dweller because I don't want to accidentally paint him. The prompt for this one was cave creature. Came from the friend who taught me about cross hatching. Um, and I look at it now and go, I drew Bat Boy. Um, but Bat Boy was not the goal. It was just random creature in cave. I suspect my friend had expected me to draw like a bat or some sort of eyeless fish, things like that, instead of drawing Bat Boy. Okay, so we're moving on to the cave itself, and that means we're going to be doing gray for the stalagmites and stuff. Um, and again, I don't mind picking up some of that black because it adds depth to our image. This is going to be a very dark image compared to my normal paintings, which are generally fairly light and more colorful. But, I mean, it's a cave. What do you expect? Little stalagmite down at the bottom. Alright, now the floor of the cave is also gray, but I don't want it to completely overpower the rest of the painting, so I'm going to be doing a lighter gray for that, and then there's little bits of debris, which if you've ever been in a cave system, that's fairly normal. My first time in a cave, I was still claustrophobic, which I've since gotten over, but it was not the most comfortable situation because, of course, I was with my teenage friends because it was on a school trip, and of course, my teenage friends were making jokes like, "Oh, what if the cave collapses on us?" Because that's what teenagers do, is make dumb jokes like that. But it was not happy, and it took me ages to get comfortable enough to go into even a cave-like area, because there is a spot at our local zoo that has an exhibit where you walk through a fake cave made out of, fiberglass and stuff, and they have bats on the walls and stuff. You know, that's where you can see the actual bats that are part of the zoo. And then, of course, there's spots where you can push a button and it lights up certain parts of the exhibit to explain, hey, this is a stalactite, this is a stalagmite, etc., etc. Um, but I was not comfortable going back in that area even for a long time. Now, I don't fit in it because my shoulders are too broad. And it does have some very tight spots. You can see how this is all really coming together now that we're doing the outer walls of the cave. You can tell that we're peering down a cave corridor, and there's a area that opens up and is even darker than the rest of the cave. And that is where our little cave creature is hiding. For Bat Boy himself, I'm trying not to really color him much at all. Um, Most things that live in caves actually have very little coloration. They tend to be white, gray. The only reason that bats are colored is because they hunt outside of the cave. But things that live in the cave their whole life that don't come out tend to have incredibly limited coloration because since it's so dark, there's no real reason for them to have it. This is also why most of the animals that live like near coral reefs are much more colorful than, say, a fish who lives in the open ocean. There's no real reason for the open ocean dwelling fish to be colorful because most of the time they're primarily just trying to hide from predators, which means it makes sense for them to kind of just blend in with their surroundings, which is water. So, as opposed to, something that lives by coral reefs where the coral is brightly colored and so they are as well, um, which is again a form of natural camouflage. If you match your coloration to that of the surrounding area, even if that coloration is very bright and flamboyant, um, it's going to be better for you in the long run than if you don't do so. Now, because he is so bright compared to his surroundings, we do need to give him a little bit of color, but it's going to be this very pale beige. Just it's actually the same one we used for the stalk of the mushroom. We're going to try and do this very carefully with limited contact with the black surrounding him. I'm going to use as little water as we can. Because we don't want to, again, overpower him with that ink bleed. You can see we're having some, but it's not as bad as it could be. Okay, so that is cave creature drawing. He looks very menacing in a I'm terrified sort of way. As obviously he is very scared because this is not what he's used to, having somebody pop into his home. Okay, so now the mushroom painting isn't quite dry. You can see there's bits of wet still. So through and find another painting I want to work on. It's surprisingly hard because there's quite a few things in here that I've drawn, but I don't really feel the need to paint. Here we go. We're gonna work on this bull that I drew. So, cleaning my brush again. And first things first, we'll go ahead and get his horns. And they're gonna be this darker beige. We used it for the cap of the mushroom. Um, just gonna tap that in there. So, not a ton of pigment. Okay. debating if I want what coloration I want for him. I don't want him to be a black bull, obviously, because it's going to hide all my details. Um, but I don't really want him to be a Holstein either. So we're going to do something like a Hereford. So it'll be an orange, and then I'll go over him with a different wash to get a bit more realistic coloration. Now I'm being very careful around um, the features like his jawline, his eyes, his ears, because I don't want to pick up a ton of water and have those smear. I want as much as possible to maintain the strength of those lines. I figure out. Yes, I know he's very oddly proportioned, um, but you know what? I think I did a decent job drawing him anyway, especially since it was my first time drawing a bull, or a cow even. Not one of my usual drawings. This orange is not that far off from the coloration of an actual Hereford bull, so I might just use it instead of doing a wash over it. I mean, normally they have some like white spotting or speckling, but they're absolutely pure color ones. So don't worry, we will be doing the gaming stream later. I just have to finish up other things first. Its tail is far too thin where it's coming out of the body, but oh well. you can generally get a rough idea of when I was working on the picture based on what color the ink is that I used, because my calligraphy pens had ink cartridges, and so I would use that same cartridge until it was empty and then switch to a different ink color. So you can tell that my bull here was drawn during the same period that I was working on the mushroom, because that's why I had that green ink for both. Oh, no, we need more water. If we finish this bull, we'll be done for the night, but I don't know. I like how he's coming out. Spots that I do tend to use different shapes of strokes and different types of strokes. Like, you guys might have noticed that I'm using curved lines as I reach around his rib cage and things like that. You might also notice I'm kind of going back a bit and blending those colors together some. I do that is the initial line is going to be the strongest even with blending, and so that curve is going to give the impression of the shape of the muscles on the bowl. Right. Now, I will say Herefords don't tend to have black tail tips, but I'm going to give him one just because it's going to make it stand out a bit. Now, I guess that's gray in this case. And now we're going to go back, and his eye is also going to be in black. And we're just going to dot that in there. Then dot for the nose. I got too much water on it. Now he's a demon cow. Oh well. And no, for anyone who's about to ask, I am not going to go and color his penis shape. That is fine with the green. Okay, so we now have our bowl. It is very shiny in the light. Well, we've been going for an hour, so I think we're actually going to end here. I do want to thank everybody who made it out tonight to watch. I'm going to go ahead and... That was the wrong one. I want that one. So, I do want to thank anyone who came and watched. I hope you guys had a lot of fun watching the stream and that it was just a... I think that I hope that you guys had fun with it, that you enjoyed watching me paint. I'm certainly not a professional painter, but I had fun doing it, and that's really what matters. And this is my co-star Figaro, who is being a very good girl now that she's not yelling. So, thank y'all again for joining me, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and a wonderful rest of the night, and maybe your year will be great too. So. Thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow for the gaming stream.